Hey guys, welcome back. I am Jeremy with the Acoustic Shoppe. Very excited to have one of my all-time mandolin heroes with me today to help give you guys some advice, some tips and tricks, but also learn some of what he went through to become as incredible a musician as he is, Mr. Alan Bibey. And Alan, you do know that I am a super fan. I think I told you when you came by the shop, I've probably stolen more of your solos than any other mandolin player out there. Not that I can do them well, but I've stolen them.
I feel like I should apologize.
I should apologize for you for plagiarism, but yeah, I think first time I heard you and really got into your playing was back with Third Time Out when you were with them, and it's like, man, how is he getting that many notes in that small of a section of time? And learned Moundsville Pin and Thanks a Lot and just some of those solos and just absolutely ate it up. So I'm a huge fan of yours, so that's why I really was excited that you agreed to sit down with us and talk a little bit about some tips and tricks on mandolin, but also inspiration on what kind of got you going. And I know we've talked to you a little bit in the past, but I think this would be a good second format to find out how you discovered the mandolin, and then when you first got it, some of the struggles you had learning it, and what your type of practice routine was like back then, if you just got so obsessed with it that you couldn't put it down, or...
Right, yeah.
So let's start back there. What made you pick up the mandolin?
Well, my dad played mandolin. He played in a group. I found out later he had loved bluegrass all his life, and so had his dad, my grandfather. But they went to a primitive Baptist church that didn't allow music, just singing, but no instruments, you know. But ironically, they both loved bluegrass, and then when he met my mom, they started dating. All her brothers played, and they needed a mandolin player, so I think at 16, he started playing mandolin. And so and they had all these contests back home in North Carolina called fiddlers conventions. They were like, back then they were happening like probably every other weekend within a 2 or 3 hour radius. It was really cool. So I'm sure I was going to those in the womb. And so I ended up, still going. I remember being at them as a kid and seeing like Wes Golden and Jimmy Arnold and Tony Rice and, even later on seeing Jimmy Haley and Lou Reed and all those guys, they come in. I remember them coming into one, they called themselves the Pink Floyd Boys, and entered the contest. But anyway, at 5 years old, he took me to see Bill Monroe in the town right next to us out there. And I remember there were so many people that he had to hold me on his shoulders. And I just remember just looking up like, oh God, that's the greatest thing I've ever seen in my life. It was just so awesome. And I remember on the way home, I still remember it. I remember saying, man, that's what I want to do. He said, well, when we get home, I'll show you a chord and see if you can, show you.
I bet he was excited.
Yeah, I think he probably was.
Yeah.
So I remember when we got home, we went straight back to the bedroom, and he showed me a chop chord, and he said I started chopping in time right away, which I always tell everybody, it sounds impressive, but by that time I'd heard so much music, if I hadn't of it might have been a big disappointment.
The offbeat was just built into you.
Yeah, that was already there, man. I'd heard it so much. And those guys were, they were old school. They didn't know any theory, and what lead they did know by ear, they wouldn't show you anything until they thought you were a good enough rhythm player.
Really?
Yeah.
That's good. I mean,
that is good.
That is an overlook, and we've talked about this with some of my students in the past. Even if you're an Alan Bibey or a Chris Thiele or just most incredible lead player, if you're in a band situation, 98% of that song is you playing rhythm. Like you're a drummer for 90% of it, and then you get that 1 30-second solo, and then it's back to rhythm.
That's right.
So that's important.
Yeah, so that was great, but it was funny because I felt like I had to sneak around and try to learn breaks, But so that was awesome, and then just my dad. I remember him telling me, he said, when you get better than me on the mandolin, I'm gonna switch to banjo. And I remember when I was 8. He said, well, you're better than me. He said, so I'm going to start playing.
That's awesome.
I know.
So what age were you when you went to that Monroe concert and just...
I was 5.
5, all right.
That's when I started playing.
So that's when you started learning the mandolin.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I remember losing a little bit of interest at times because I couldn't... Back then, there was just no learning aids or teaching aids. There wasn't no amazing slowdown, or you had to slow down the records. I mean, I've got boxes full of cassettes that me and my cousin slowed down the breaks. I'd take whoever's break I liked. I like Skaggs' break on this tune. I like Dole's break on this tune. I liked Herschel's break on this, and David Grisman or whatever, Sam Bush, whatever, and then we'd slow them all down. I just got boxes full, so you had to tune down your mandolin, and then. But it was great ear training because I remember learning the break to Pick Away. I can't remember what record that's on, but I thought I'd learn it. And I remember coming back a few months later, and I thought, man, I wasn't even close. So at least that means my ear was getting a little better.
Improved.
Yeah. So it was pretty wild.
So that brings up a good point. Like in bluegrass especially, I think the majority of players out there start by learning by ear. They listen to a solo, they repeat it enough over and over and over until they get their fingers to match the sound they're hearing. And I know that's kind of the way I started out. I did get some lessons early on. I was not good at reading tablature, but I would try to learn the solo, and pretty soon you start to learn positions that these players are in so that it's easier to find and locate the melody that you're hearing.
Definitely.
But it does take that time of hunting and missing a lot of notes until you find the correct note.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a great tool for training your ear. But like I said, now there are a lot more tools. You can get the amazing slowdowner that doesn't change the pitch. You can change it in 1% increments and slow it down and get it back up.
Right.
And a lot of times I'll take some of those solos and go actually past 100% to see if I can play it faster than the original recording, just so that when you slow it back down, it's like, okay,
that's pretty easy.
I can handle this.
Yeah. I remember like even being behind them, and the first time I heard a minor chord, and I was, again, there was so I kind of come at it backwards, like you said, totally from ear, and then I learned theory later.
Yeah.
So everything I was already doing, I had to learn why.
Theory helped explain why.
Right,
you're doing it.
right. So I remember the first time I heard a minor chord, I was like, and I didn't know at that time, but that major third didn't sound right, and I knew that did sound right, but I didn't have a clue why. But I just knew not to play that note.
Yeah.
So just,
So I got a question. You said like there was a lot of contests going on in that area. Is that something that you got involved in doing the contest scene?
I did. So like I remember when I was 8, and back then, like where I grew up in very rural North Carolina, the only way a kid could make any money was working tobacco, which was really back-breaking work even for a kid. It's tough. And you only made like a couple dollars an hour, and it was rough. So I remember my dad taught me and played my first contest. I really didn't want to, for some reason I didn't want to enter, but he taught me into playing this contest down in Madison, right down from us, North Carolina. And I won 3rd place and won $5. I thought, oh yeah, this is it right here.
And so, paid professional.
Yeah. So that just happened, and that was it was a great training ground because most of them judged you out of a band setting, so it wasn't like you were just stepping up and playing a mandolin tune.
Okay.
And I mean, there was a few that was different than that, but it was a great, like I said, it was just awesome for me to learn how to play within a band. But then, I was still, it gave me inspiration to also work to the next contest to be better and to get better.
That's something that I've personally noticed, and some of my favorite players you included, and Chris Thiele, and Josh Williams, Cody Kilby, just legendary players. We're all contest people, and the thing about those contests is you really had to learn, 10, 20 variations on a melody, so that when you got on stage, you could do 3 solos, and they'd all be almost completely different. Which for me, I didn't do that enough, and I started kind of getting into a routine of here's the solo I always played a big mon, or here's the solo I played a. Right. So those contests kind of forced you to like explore the mandolin more and come at that melody from a different direction.
Definitely. Totally. And another thing, the guys I played with back then, they would play tunes in unusual chords. So, and again, it may be a good thing or a bad thing, but since there was so little to learn, once I learned a lick, and I knew they would play these things in unusual chords. So if I learned a lick, I would try to learn how to play it in every key.
Yeah.
And I think that might have been a really good thing for me, because if I'd have had so much information, I may not have took the time to do that. Mm-hmm. So it really helped me learn the neck of the mandolin. Even if it's something really simple, just learn how to play it in every key.
And was there any point that you did take lessons from a mandolin instructor, or was it all pretty much self?
No, I probably would have loved to, but like my dad just showed me what little he knew, and he played more of a style. It was more of a double stop. So his breaks would probably sound like something like that. But he had really good timing, so that did affect me from the start, is hearing that timing. But then, so he taught my cousin, who played in a group called Boot Hill with Louisa Branscombe. They were the first ones that recorded Steel Rails. She wrote it. And he's been playing at the Carolina Opera. He's a great musician. And he's kind of like me. He's a little bit OCD, so he really helped me. We hung out all the time, even though he's 4 years older than me. But he was the first one to give me a little bit of insight on some technique, because nobody else, like I said, they didn't think about any of that stuff. Yeah. But he did get me thinking about using my pinky from the start, and so it got me to where I just, anytime I played that, what you could play the open A, I would always opt for the closed position, and it got me really used to playing like that, and it really helped the strength of my pinky, which I think I would advise anybody to try to do. And he also got me thinking. I remember at one point he said, "Your left hand's not the problem; it's your right hand." And I thought, well, I never even thought about my right hand, you know,
looking at this,
which is right. I'm just worried about these notes, and I think I've seen the things that left hand's what you know and right hand's who you are. I've heard that.
Yeah.
And I thought that's pretty cool, and that's pretty right. If your right hand is, you can get away with a lot of different things, but you know, you really need to think about your right hand at least.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, because I think a lot of times people hear some duddy notes and they're blaming their left hand, but it could just be the right hand's not in sync with the left hand, so it's hitting it at the wrong moment, or not quite hitting the string flat on, and so that does make a big difference. Pay attention. Do you have some right hand exercises you do or recommend or to warm up with?
Not really. Maybe. Well, I do think about it more now. I think when I was younger, everything I played so much that everything was so easy. But now as I've got a little bit older, I think I'll have to work a little bit harder now. And like, you know, and I'm sure anybody that's even learning, if you're playing on one string, that's a lot easier than if you're playing. So maybe just playing like I do this thing, I always call it the Herschel Sizemore roll of the.
Sounds easier than it is if you're first learning that, because because it's a 3-note pattern, it flips the direction of.
That's the
down,
part
up,
that always
down,
does
up, down,
everybody.
up,
When I first learned it, I was thinking. I remember just sitting there thinking, because I wanted to make sure again the OCD kicked in, so I would just sit around and go. And I had to think about it a minute. I couldn't connect it yet. I had to go, okay, it's up, down, up this time. And then switch back and forth. But if you stick with it, you know, eventually it'll be. There's so much you can do with that, but that's a great right hand exercise and something useful in your lead play.
Yeah, I practice with that too, and there's some, like I said, there's some lead stuff you can do with that exact pattern that sounds really cool.
Yeah.
So I have a question with you. Playing by ear and taking from some of your favorite, you know, like I said, I found a Bill Lawson solo I love, I found a Ricky Skaggs solo I love, Herschel Sizemore, and kind of learning what they're playing. How did you finally kind of condense those all into Alan Bibey's style? Like, you have a very definitive style, very fast and clean playing. Yeah, you can throw some triplet runs in there like no one I've ever heard. So how did the Alan Bibey thing come out of that conglomeration of all these other players?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. And I got into Buck White, and that was such a different total style. You know, not notey, but very cool notes when you did play note, you know, stuff. And I besides learning from all of them, I finally realized, I don't have to learn just mandolin breaks. I can learn the guitar breaks or whatever. So I just started learning every Tony Rice solo on the mandolin.
Wow.
Or a Jerry Douglas solo. Like, I remember the first time I heard him come into a break early, I went, oh man, that would sound so cool on the mandolin.
He didn't wait till the downbeat?
Like, he wants more of that. Yeah. I do too, that's so cool. And then I played with I had these guys that before anybody, which is telling my age, but back before anybody played Tony Rice licks on the guitar, I met up with these guys at one of those contests. And I remember I would always walk around, you know, looking for good pickers. And I remember just hearing it come out of this room. I was like, man, I've never heard anybody but Tony Rice play like that. Anyway, one of them turned out to be a really good electric guitar player and played all this rock and roll stuff. And that's the first time I ever heard triplets that I know of.
Yeah.
And so I sat down with him and made him show me how he was playing these triplets. And I thought that would sound so cool on the mandolin. So that's how I kind of got into that. And I think, you know, after that, it sounds crazy, but after learning all that stuff, I think I played so much because I got, like you talked about, getting to a point where you just obsessed. Well, when the 0044 album came out, the J.D. Crowe album, I got to play in quite a bit for sure. But once the Boone Creek album came out, with one-way track on it, I became obsessed.
Yeah.
And I played I got up and played every morning before I went to school for an hour or two. I thought about it the whole time I was at school. I'd sit on the desk and be like this, doing this the whole time. And then, you know, and then on the weekends I'd go play with those guys, the guitar players, and we'd play 10 and 12 hours a day.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So I think that learning all those guys' things and then melting that into playing so much is what helped me create whatever style I have here.
Yeah. So when you were really working out some of these triplets because you are so precise with it. Do you recommend a metronome? Do you play with a metronome? How do you get your two hands in such sync for that quick of a run?
Yeah, I mean,
do you start those licks like really slow and just keep doing it over and over?
Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly right. I had my wife asked me one time when we first got married if I had to do that so many times over and over, and I was like, yeah, I kind of do.
There's no shortcut.
But yeah, that's exactly how I think of it. It's just practicing with the metronome, especially when you're first learning them. I mean, and it depends on how much you've played. You get to a point if you become obsessed with it that maybe the timing won't be so hard. And again, my dad was a banjo player and he played everything fast. Mm-hmm. So I guess I became able to play fast and clean out of necessity, kind of, to be able to play with him.
I think that's probably the biggest thing that people ask right away is like, how do I play faster? They want to jump in immediately from learning the solo to now being at 100%.
Right.
Is there any advice for that, like to develop speed?
I think the biggest thing is just being relaxed, as it is with anything. But I know that's and I totally get it because I've been in the last 10 years especially. I've really gotten into jazz, so it's really been good for me to be learning something, and I'm just like everybody else. I want to be able to play it right now.
Yeah.
You think when you get older, you learn. No, you don't learn. Yeah. So I want to play it right now, but I've realized if I just stick with it and play a little bit every day gets a little bit easier. Mm-hmm. So
it's a gradual progression to speed. You can't just.
Yep.
And I think a lot of it is just the repetition of the same thing over and over. In your brain, it's probably going to more the subconscious side of it. So you're not. When you're playing a fast run like that, you're not thinking 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. You can't think of those notes that quickly. It has to be just. I've done this so many times that the subconscious mind takes over and it just does it.
Totally. Yep, I agree. Yeah.
So, do you have any advice for somebody? Have you run across this? I guess I'll ask you first, where you'll feel like you're hitting kind of a plateau and you don't see a lot of improvement, or has it been pretty gradual, steady improvement when you need it?
No, I've totally felt plateaus in my playing, and sometimes it may just be for me. I'll just if I just think I find myself playing this solo out of this same position, and it's I want to change it up a little bit. I may just change, instead of starting out in B up here, I may start up in this area or up here, or start on the 7th chord if it's a bluesy thing or something, or 7th position, an A position or something to just change it up. But also, just my playing, just thinking, man, I've just really hit a plateau. I'm not really learning anything. And that's when that's the times I found myself sometimes going to other instruments. Mm-hmm. And learning stuff, and it kind of opens you up to like, oh, wow, I never thought about playing that like that before.
Yeah.
So that's helped me get through those times.
Well, it's good to hear that you go through them too, because I feel like sometimes I'm just playing the same thing over and over. I got to work on. Mm-hmm. So, being conscious and intentional about breaking out of it, and that's a great idea. That quit kicking it off in the same position. Make yourself play it in the chord position, or something that just makes you break out of the routine.
Yeah, so you don't have any choice.
Yeah. And then, advice now that you've become as established as you are, and you probably put in, multiple tens of thousands of hours on the mandolin. What does your practice routine look like now? Is it more like you get really intense when you're getting ready to do a new album, or you're getting ready to learn some new songs, or is it still a pretty steady practice routine?
It's still fairly steady. I try to at least pick it up and play. If I play 30 minutes a day, on the days that I'm not playing 3 or 4 or 5 hours or something. It just keeps me going. I remember Sonny Osborne told me one time, he said, if you don't know your instrument during the week, it won't know you on the weekend.
That's
and
great.
Like, man, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I like that.
So, if I know I got 30 minutes, I'll sit down and try to, with a metronome, and just, warm up playing my, not near that fast, but just to get my two hands working together, like you said, like. Do all those and maybe start on I'll do that one just to keep just because so I get that stretch.
Yeah.
That helps me before I play. I'll play those and just work on all those patterns that start on different fingers. That kind of stuff. And maybe for the first 5 or 10 minutes do that, and I can find that really does help get my hands together in sync, you know. And then maybe work on something that I knew and for a few minutes, and then maybe work on, just check myself with a metronome on something that I think I've got.
Yeah. Because
I have found that I've sat down and think, oh, okay, I know I'm nailed this, and maybe you're not slowing down, maybe you're speeding up in an easy spot.
Yeah.
So that's good check on yourself.
Do you still find yourself ever going and learning somebody's solo note for note?
Not as much in bluegrass probably, but definitely jazz stuff I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's still, that ear training is still essential part of your growth.
Yeah,
as a
yeah,
musician.
definitely. And I think, you know, I talked to Mike Marshall at we were doing a camp together just this past year, and we were just talking about learning. And you know, I remember as a kid, I remember hearing guys say, well, you know, you never learn. The more you learn, the more you figure out there is to learn. And I was like, no way. There's got to be a spot, you know, where you're, you know. But I think that's true. So everybody's at a different place in their journey, and he said, you know, I realized that I'm not going to live long enough to learn everything I want to learn.
No.
I thought, that's totally right. You know, so we're all learning.
And you mentioned there you do a lot of camps. You're in a lot of the mandolin camps, and you teach, and you do some private lessons too, right? Online?
I do. Yeah.
So a question I like to ask is: are there some mistakes that you see either beginners make pretty consistently, or intermediate players that you can help people to try to avoid? Is there some ones that come up pretty often?
Yeah. The one thing I see is the right hand thing. Is getting a funky right hand technique.
You do a lot. You're pretty much all down, up, down, alternating.
Yeah, I just think. I mean, I know, and you can work with any. You see guys with all different techniques that play great, but for me, it just makes a lot more sense. Like I think a lot of people's upstroke is a lot softer than their downstroke. You can hear it in some people's playing. So I think that holding those fingers together, even though I'm trying to still be relaxed, you got some help with that upstroke with those other fingers. Where if you're playing like this,
that's stronger.
Yeah, so it feels more stable and strong for me. Another thing I noticed with sometimes intermediate players is their pull-offs, hammer-ons, and slides tend to be a little, maybe like a more like, when they don't hear that second note.
Yeah.
So you got to hold it down. I think if you can learn to like doing that on their hammer-ons, or any of that, just working on those three things really makes your playing sound more advanced.
Yeah. And that's something I've noted about your playing is these notes are almost fractions. You know, you got a measure, you got those 4 downbeats, then you got those eighth notes in between, and when you do those pull-offs, they should be like evenly divided in there so that it's not just like two quick notes or you went straight to that second one. There's a distinct space and time for getting those 2 notes in there.
Right. Yeah, and it just really makes you sound at a different level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really good advice.
Yeah.
All right, I do want to ask you some of the gear you're using, the mandolin, the strings you use, the pick you use.
Okay. Well, this is my old Gibson, it's a July 9 23 lower, and I play this a good bit, and sometimes I just play it through a mic. I'll also have a DPA I play it with and use one of those Rex Grace pedals. And then a lot of times also I have a Red Diamond F-style mandolin that I have a K&K pickup in. I love the K&K pickups. And then I run through a tone dexter that really gets good sound, and I step into a mic when I take my breaks with that, and I think that really helps the acoustic sound of it. You know?
Yeah, those are great.
Picks, I use Nick Monin at Apollo Picks helped me come up with this Alan Bibey pick that I really like. We really made this from a tortoiseshell that I just loved the feel of. So the sides are a little bit different. So, and I usually play with the shoulders. I Shoppe sometimes with the points. I'm not sure that's great advice to change in the middle of your playing, but
that's something that surprised me is that you have pretty rounded corners on your pick that you're still able to get that attack and that speed.
Yeah, well.
It's comfortable, I guess.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
And then the strings you use?
Yeah, I'm really into the Dario XS strings right now.
very nice, yeah.
Yeah, they seem to last a little bit longer, and I don't like to change strings quite as much as I used
There's
to.
8 of them.
Yeah, that's right. There's a lot.
And I see you have a tone guard on the back of the mandolin.
I do. Yeah, I really like that.
You got the Alan Bibey, the
Yeah,
AB.
Tony sent that to me just out of the blue years ago. He sent me a couple of them. So, yeah, I've kind of AB'd those in my studio. Haha, AB. And I think it does sound better with it on there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And then definitely standing, when you're on stage and it's off your stomach, it makes a big difference.
That way, if I do gain a little weight, it's cool.
It works. And the pick guard, is that something you've always been able to deal with a pick guard, or?
Yeah, I've never had a problem with a pick guard, but that's another thing. I've AB'd forever and just took it on and off and couldn't decide which one I liked the best. But I've finally decided I think I really like the look of the pick guard.
Yeah.
So.
And did you scoop the fretboard extension on this?
I did, or actually, Hugh Hansen did this one for me in Nashville. So we decided to come up, and me and my cousin did this to our mandolins in the 70s. I think we may have been the first people to ever do that. And back then we even did the same thing. So we left the frets in so that it would still look from here. It kind of looks like you still got it's not changed, So, but
that's just to avoid that click.
Just avoid that click, yeah, because I do tend to dig in sometimes, probably more than I should, and I'll get that. Who's that knocking at your door, dude?
And I guess last technique question with the right hand, do you end up planting behind the bridge?
I don't. I think I feel myself just, brazing over it a little bit. But obviously you can tell I anchor right there. Yeah. I remember at one point going, man, what's right on my arm? I went, oh my God. And then I went, oh, I see. It's not a carbuncle. Or maybe it is, but I caused it.
Well, that's great, Alan. I think this has all been really good advice, and I hope people got some inspiration, some ideas from you. I appreciate you sitting down with us and taking a few minutes to tell us how the Alan Bibey technique it became my favorite technique out there. So I appreciate it so much.
Thanks. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just have fun. That's how come I've kept wanting to keep playing so many hours, because it's fun. So just have fun. That's the main thing.
And that is something for people when you really get into a practice session. Sometimes it's surprising. You'll look up at the clock and realize you've been doing this for 4 hours and didn't even notice, because once you start discovering stuff and it's working,
it's awesome.
It gets addictive.
It is. Yep. I even still do that at this age. So
that's good. Well, thank you so much, Alan.
Yeah, man. Yes, sir, Jeremy. Always.